Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product. In our studio today, I have my good friend David Cunningham. David is the Chief Innovation Officer at Reed Smith, which is a premium 3,000 people strong global law firm. At Reed Smith, he is responsible for running their innovation lab, their data analytics, their knowledge management, their research, and then, of course, AI, which is what we're here for today. And he has over 20 years of management consulting experience in helping over 200 law firms. I'm really excited for David to join us. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help CPOs use AI to build efficient and effective product teams. David, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Same here. Listen, you and I have talked about it a few times. I think the way AI is impacting your industry is just awesome. So I'm glad we can talk. Let's start with the big picture, if that's okay with you, right? Just share with our audience, what has been the impact of AI on your industry so far? Or how has it changed?
Yeah, it's we've had AI for a decade in the e-discovery space, and
Yeah.
so in that way, it's old news. And so if you narrow that to generative AI, like most people do when they think of AI today, if that's obviously new and still immature, but it is at least driven a conversation. So
Yeah.
it's talked about constantly. At first, a year ago, lawyers were more concerned that, oh, I'm going to be replaced by AI. I wouldn't say that most lawyers are nearly that concerned anymore. But it is, if you think about it, it's coming over the hype curve where now I would say the hype is coming down, but into a place where people are getting more serious about the actual results. And so it's been nice that it's driven a lot of leadership hiring. Like I have a director of applied AI with a ton of experience. There's been some others in my role, chief of innovation, are really just AI focused. And so
Nice.
people are really investing for the next 2 to 3 to 5 years. And so that's a good thing.
Perfect.
But it is, the actual impact today, there's lots of good stories and use cases, but it's very early days and it's certainly not disruptive. It's interesting and useful.
Yeah.
And we bill by the hour generally, primarily. And so there's this elephant in the room of, oh, is it going to create fewer hours? Is that a good thing? Right. And so it forces a efficiency discussion, which for
Yeah.
most companies is obviously good. For law firms is a disruptive conversation.
Yeah.
And so
Does
it
it actually
forces
hit your revenue, right?
exactly. So how do we come out of that good? That's right.
I want to talk about where you see the industry going 5 to 10 years from now. But before I do that, you mentioned something very interesting, and I think it happens not just in your industry, but also other industries. So you're right. When AI first came out, and we're talking about generative AI, people are afraid, right? They were thinking that the AI is going to take over their jobs. And now people are more comfortable with it, and they can see it more as a tool that's actually going to assist them get their work done better. I'm curious, what happened, or what do you think, what helped them change that perspective? Just using the tool helped it, or was there something else? Was it an external factor? I'm just curious.
One is that I think everybody, and us included, thought its most obvious use case was for legal research, and ends up it's not graded legal research.
Hmm.
Be able to keep, because legal research is very nuanced. You have to understand what state is my context.
Right.
The dates are very important, and so you can't hallucinate in legal research. It has to be perfect, and so
Yeah.
that's coming. And so but that disappointment in saying, oh, legal research will be so easy now, and then it really wasn't, and then just now we're starting to see it get useful again in that
Mm.
area. And so we had to transition from that context to where we do use it, which is the
Right.
summarization of large documents or throwing 500 documents at it. So that summarization use case was totally different, but very useful. We had to
Yeah.
learn about how to apply it.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, new technology comes in, everybody gets a little bit scared,
Right.
right? Or they think it can do too much. And then eventually we get more grounded, right? So this kind of brings us to that next question as to how do you see this changing AI? How does AI change your industry for the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see this going?
Yeah. Well, I try to always not just focus on generative AI because of all the flavors of AI, it is
That's
the
true.
least mature. But
Yeah.
so I'll throw two answers at you. One is from the generative AI standpoint, we're already seeing it start to be more useful in more ways. And
Right.
so it is very feasible. It disrupts our staffing model to say, we don't need as many junior lawyers. These are questions. Do we need as
Yeah.
many junior lawyers in the future? How do associates get trained in the law schools in the future?
Mm.
And if we're relying less on that pipeline, how do we grow the lawyers of the future? These are very active questions we have today. And I would think, 5 to 10, those will be fully impacted. And so that's a big deal for us because we're finding we need the seniority in a lawyer in order to realize how to tune that question 10
Yeah.
times. And a junior lawyer may assume
Yeah.
that it's okay and moves
Yeah.
on. Then the non-generative AI, and where I think it'll have a much bigger impact, is illegal hasn't been disrupted by a platform yet, like
Mm.
most other industries. And so when you start applying, we're another trend is we're getting better at data, which most people
Right.
agree, generative AI isn't great unless your data is great. And so that's useful because as we're applying, predictive analytics and machine learning and other aspects to our data, I think we'll end up with the algorithms and the platforms that seem obviously missing in an expensive market like ours. And in more than 5 to 10 years, I think those will be how business gets done. That'll be a huge change for us.
I like that. And I particularly the first part of your question is that you can ask AI the question, but somebody needs to know if the response is good enough or not.
That's right.
And
That's
for
right.
that, you need people who know what the hell they're talking about.
That's right. Where do those
Right.
people come in the future if they, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
That's a great segue. So let's kind of talk about what's going on within your firm and within your innovation center, right? So how are you guys experimenting with AI? And if you can share any use cases, that'd be great too.
Yeah, sure. Well, we took an early approach of saying rather than, so a lot of firms said we're not going to use AI. A few firms said we're going to announce it. We rolled it out to the whole firm. We were, we want to be one step behind the PR
Mm.
focus and say, we don't care about the PR. We want to really learn the tools and dig in and see what's useful. And so we did pilots with 6 tools.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
we didn't try to jump in and say this is clearly the one because at the time none of them were really useful enough to do that. But from that we ended up committing to one tool in the legal market. There's a tool called Harvey that's based on OpenAI,
Mm.
and it is not a legal research tool. It is a kind of our general purpose tool. And so we are alpha testers with their roadmap to
Oh,
help build on new use cases in the legal market as our a few other firms. At the same time, we're continuing these tests with other vendors. In our markets, Lexus and Bloomberg and Thomson
right.
Reuters, et cetera. And so we're continuing those pilots and at the product table with their teams to help them learn and prove. And so it's not just picking one product for us.
Yeah.
It is really these use cases.
Yeah.
And so we are, and so we have an innovation lab that is from the AI context. We've worked with several of these companies to create licenses with a pool of licenses in the lab
Awesome.
so that we can invite our clients in. Because one of the things we want to do is say, rather than us using AI and then downloading a document, then emailing it to a client, we assume the future is more like email, where you're
Right.
constantly collaborating, going back and forth, and you're both in an email, sorry, in an AI context the entire time.
Right.
And so that collaboration of, does a client start a document more often? Does our AI know the documents within the legal department of our client? And when
Right.
we start a document, does it already know all of their information? There's always been a gulf between our clients, who are the legal departments of the largest
Right.
corporations, and the law firms. And this has the potential to bridge that and say, all right, now we're going to work together from the same data set. That's a big
Okay.
change for us.
I like the idea about spreading your risk across multiple tools, right? And I think that makes sense. And I think making the investments, like you even said about getting ahead of AI into your innovation lab, all of those are fantastic. Are there certain, for a lack of a better word, tasks that you're leaning into? So you know what? I think AI is really good at this task for my firm. Are there things that you have focused on?
Yeah. I mean, for the lawyers, it's different flavors, a way to summarize large amounts of
Mm.
information. And so maybe summarizing, one example would be a new regulation is published in France and it's 300 pages.
Yeah.
And normally someone stays up till it's published. You read it all night and then you're sending out, information to your client. And how do we use generative AI to read and challenge us and look at that from
Right.
scenarios and digest that information? But there's a whole nother avenue that we are applying AI and generative AI in as well, which is
Mm.
kind of the business of the firm. And so we are feeding it our time entry data, our
Huh.
because we're lawyers, we track time by the minute, and so that's very rich data about what everybody is doing in our firm, and we're feeding it into a legal specific model, private model within our firewall even. But from that, we're able to learn what do things cost and who's doing what, and we can look for efficiencies or somewhere where we may be trending out of budget
Right.
early on, and so learning about ourselves and how to tune the machine is a really fascinating aspect of
Yeah.
applying AI to ourselves
Nice.
to understand in real time what's going on.
And are you using private LLMs for this, or are you still using OpenAI as your backend?
For that example in particular, we're using a private legal specific
Yeah,
model.
that makes
Yeah.
sense, right? Because you probably you want to be careful with that information.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. In that case, we don't let it leave our own site, but we do both. We also
that's good.
use models that use OpenAI. We're not afraid of that by any
Um,
means.
I love the examples and the use cases make sense because it is, you're right. Summarization is a huge benefit, especially when we have 300 pages document that you talked about.
Right.
But the analysis is also good. I always say that AI is good at finding the needle in the haystack.
Right.
Right. But let's switch to challenges, right? So like anything else, adopting new technologies or changing the way people work is
Right.
always fun. So I'm curious, as you're experimenting and running this through your lab, what are some of the challenges that you're facing and how are you overcoming them?
Well, I mean, I mentioned before that we thought we could jump right into legal research and that the tools were so poor that you had the hype of lawyers getting excited coming into these pilot tests and realizing, oh, this is a lot of work to figure out
Right.
that it's not really useful to me. And so that was a big challenge, keeping people engaged. They're really busy. Lawyers are very busy, stressed by profession. And to come spend some time on something that's experimental and it's not really very good yet.
Yeah.
That wasn't and luckily, there's enough, we're a pretty good sized firm. So there's enough of even a small percentage of people that are, love the stuff as much as we do. And so we're happy to push back. We had to really push back a lot.
Yeah.
And so, keeping the busy lawyers engaged was certainly one. The other is, as always, the data sets. So we've
Yeah.
invested in a huge data warehouse for our own, for that internal analysis of things. And then the vendors have the same challenge because if they are helping us with, a global litigation, what's the quality? There's only really four companies that have
Right.
quality data sets in that space. And so that is, they had the data sets, but how well could they transition their skill
Mhm.
sets, be a generative AI engine on top of those?
Yeah.
It took them a long time, really a year to start realizing how they needed to evolve. And
Yeah.
so it's really, like a lot of things here, it's the maturity of the
Yeah.
ecosystem itself. We've, we've enjoyed, and so it's slow to buy things
Yeah.
necessarily, and we are not afraid to build them, but we try very hard to buy them just on a scaling factor. If
Yeah.
we can get a vendor behind us, then we can probably move a lot faster than if we go build
Mhm.
something ourselves. And so
Yeah.
we haven't been building much ourselves, but there are certain areas where we have some proprietary areas to say, well, no,
Yeah.
and there's not a solution on the market. We're just going to go create that.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
I like the strategy about, being a fast follow with a vendor because that actually gives you scale and leverage much quicker than anything
Right.
else.
Right.
Um, Coming back to the first point you made about adoption challenges, right? Just, how are you overcoming it? Because you're, like you said, lawyers are very busy. And of course you have a group of diehard fans who are actually helping you build a solution. But You know this as well as I know this, right? It doesn't matter what solution you build, it's the adoption is what you actually start gaining the benefits.
Right.
So I'm curious to see, what have you guys done, or what are you guys planning to do as you roll these new solutions out?
Yeah, it's a really big area for us. And in fact, we hired a director of change leadership, which is a unique role. And she came from Amazon, where she handled the
Awesome.
integration of their mergers. So not a legal, no one in legal really has had that much focus on it. So that's how serious we are. And she's got a team that we're
Nice.
building out. But it is, but on AI specifically, it's been a lot of storytelling.
Hmm.
So we needed, like every other, for example, every other week I send out a digest of a topic,
Oh,
and
wow.
every other time it's been stories from our lawyers that are using our AI and learning. And so we get their pictures and a quote.
Nice.
Here's how I used it, and it did that. And so it's not so much, what does Dave say? It's a matter of, oh, here's a lawyer I respect, or someone I would like to be like. And they've found a little nugget way that really was helpful to them in their
Perfect.
practice. Yeah, that,
Perfect.
that really helps.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think those types of in the trenches type of stories make a huge impact, right? And then I'm assuming you always get people to say, well, if that person can do it, how did he or she do it?
yeah.
And how can I do it? Right. So that helps. David, one last question. There's a lot of chief innovation officers, not just in law firms, but everywhere else,
Right.
who are trying to use AI to make their companies more effective and more efficient. Um, Curious if you have any nuggets of wisdom, so to speak, as they start their own journey with AI.
Well, I mean, it's AI or not. I mean, one thing that I've found surprisingly unique about the way we've positioned my role here is a lot of innovation officers have their own silo. And if we're saying, oh, we're the AI people, we're the knowledge management people, that's what I see a lot.
Hmm.
And what we've done here is be more horizontal to say, we're really here to add fuel
Right.
to the fires that are already out there. So we work a lot with the marketing team. We work a
Nice.
lot with the finance team. And so instead of saying we're the AI guys, we're saying, how can we apply smart processes and product management and AI and data science
Right.
to finance?
Yeah.
And so our big initiatives are, about the pipeline, about the finance, about legal teams of the future. And they're really other people's areas that we are
Yeah.
exploding. And I think that's the magic, because
Yeah.
it's not just inventing something in parallel to all those efforts. That's a big deal.
I do like that because I think being horizontal, you are almost at the service to these other departments as opposed to being your own silo. Because
Exactly.
I've seen too many innovation labs fail simply because of that structure. Right.
Mm.
I think that's great. David, anything else you want to share? This has been fantastic so far. I mean, you're always in the forefront huh, of what's
Well,
going on with AI and the legal industry.
it's tough to accept that kind of compliment in a law firm, because I know we're always trying to catch up, but it's actually a good petri dish, because we do have a lot of structured data. We're tracking our time. We have court data. We have transactional
Yeah.
data. And because we sometimes maybe look at a Price Waterhouse as someone, oh, they're much bigger, they can invest more. There's a, we can, I feel like in the last 3 years, we've swung from middle of the pack to being pretty much as good as a Price Waterhouse in some of our
Nice.
areas. And
Yeah.
so the impact that I feel I can have in my role in an industry like ours is very significant. That's what's meaningful to me. It's not just
Yeah.
incremental, throw it in. It's like we're
Yeah.
really trying to grow up, and that's been really
Yeah.
nice.
And I think that's great because I think a lot of times, I mean, we've talked about this. Consulting, legal profession are some of the last organizations or industries to be disrupted, but AI just offers a new promise and a challenge.
Right.
With that being said, allow me to say thank you very much for the interview. I'm going to have you back because there's always things changing. But
This
thanks
is
for
easy
being
to
a
talk
guest.
about.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye for now.